So you just got a new FoodCycler, or you're thinking of buying a Vitamix FoodCycler food composter. You need to know how best to compost your food scraps. And you may have noticed some food residue sticking on the insides and bottom of your food composting bucket. Well, today I'm going to walk you through caring for your FoodCycler and a few FoodCycler troubleshooting solutions. By the end of this video, you will know what's up with that food residue and how to maintain your FoodCycler in good working order. Hi everyone, I'm Zanana Rose, a nurse and health expert, and this is Natural Living with Zanana, where I share information, tips, and product reviews to help you live a more healthy, sustainable, natural, and non-toxic lifestyle. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're so happy to have you in this community. And today we are going to be talking about the Vitamix FoodCycler. So let's just jump right in. I've had my FoodCycler for probably about 9 months now, and I've been using it very consistently, at least once a day on average. And I don't know about you, but I've run into a little bit of a concern. Sometimes when I am composting, I notice at the end of the cycle, a residue is left on the bottom of the bucket. I've got a picture of that here for you. This is the first few times it started happening for me. So I contacted FoodCycler and I found out a lot of information about how to deal with this situation. So first off, let's open my FoodCycler. I've brought it here onto the counter so that we can look at it together and work through this process together of caring for and maintaining our FoodCycler. We're going to do some batches of composting so that you can see exactly how it's done and what FoodCycler recommends to keep your bucket healthy and looking really good. So I'm just going to open the lid here and I'll pull out my bucket, and we'll be able to see the last batch that I composted here. So we can see it's got some seeds in it. That's okay. Sometimes things don't thoroughly compost, and that's just fine. It will still go into the soil and break down. It's completely dried out. You may or may not know that once it has totally dried out, there is no bacteria or anything left in the FoodCycler, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And so here is my compost. I'm just gonna pour this into the rest of my compost that I've been collecting over a period of weeks here. So we're gonna pour this into here, and sometimes, oh, look, here's a whole bunch that got stuck to the top of the FoodCycler there, but that's just fine, and you can see that it came off very easily. I'm gonna turn the blade inside of here because sometimes you have to do that. It can get a little stuck, and it can also hide some of the compost that needs to come out when you're trying to empty it. I've got some parts that are totally stuck on here, but when I do scrape it with my nail, it does start to come off. So I can do that as I'm taking it out of the FoodCycler and just checking it and emptying it. So I did that, pour that into the measuring cup there, and look, there's more little sheets of it that can easily be peeled off. So it is nice and helpful to just get that off every single time you're emptying your FoodCycler. But you can see that there is definitely a coating of residue that is on the bucket. Now the bucket is made of kind of a non-stick material, which is really nice. It makes it easy to maintain and to use. So when I first had this caked on residue, I thought, oh my goodness, it's ruined. Sort of like a non-stick pan once you've used it and the non-stick isn't working anymore. So I thought that it was going to be important to wash it. And FoodCycler in the instruction manual does say that you can wash it occasionally, but it's really not necessary. Well, in the beginning, I didn't quite believe that because I like to keep my appliances, my pots and pans nice and clean. So to me, when I saw this, I was like, no way, this needs to be cleaned. So the first several times I kept cleaning it and cleaning it. Well, then I would end up with half of my compost going down the drain. And that didn't even make any sense, because the whole point of this device is to compost your food waste, not to just dry it out and then wash it down the drain in your dish disposal. So I wrote to Vitamix to find out what to do about this. Has this happened to any of you guys? If it has, definitely leave a comment down in the comment section, because we'd all like to hear what you have found sticks and what you have found works to break up the sticking and clean up your FoodCycler bucket again. Before we talk about what FoodCycler said, let's go ahead and look at the FoodCycler manual, and we'll just review really quickly what to put in your FoodCycler and what not to put in your FoodCycler. So the FoodCycler comes with this very handy menu that tells you basically everything that you need to know about your FoodCycler. And it says that, like any healthy diet, the FoodCycler performs best when fed a wide variety of foods. To ensure optimal food waste breakdown, mix food waste together with heavier foods, intersperse with lighter, drier foods. Avoid high concentrations of starches, citrus fruit rinds, condiments, dressings, sauces and soups, nut butters, jam, jellies, marmalades, high sugar fruit like grapes, cherries, melon, oranges, bananas, etc. The dense, starchy, and our moisture-rich composition of these foods make them difficult to process inside of the FoodCycler. And if you have some higher fiber content stuff, some husks or things like that, it is really best to cut them or break them up before you're putting them into your FoodCycler. And then of course it says not to put anything other than organic waste, and no large bones, no pits, candy, gum, nuts, or hard shells. And you also don't want to put any oils inside of your FoodCycler. That's what I've been doing. I've been leaving out all of those items, including like chicken skins and fish skins. I have tried that in my FoodCycler and it really just doesn't work. It ends up making your compost much more oily, and I have just found that it's best to leave that out. So in my experience, it doesn't really compost everything, but it does compost most things. So like we were saying, after a while, I started getting this residue. And so I decided to go ahead and write to FoodCycler, and this is what they wrote back to me. The caking on the bucket will not affect the FoodCycler process. So they call it caking, and I was calling it a little residue. Same thing, guys. And this is a normal finding. This can and will happen when food waste with high levels of starch and sugars are added to the bucket. As long as your end product is dried and flaky, just like this, your FoodCycler is doing its job. Some cycles leave a very clean bucket, and others can leave a caked on end result. Who knew? This is normal. I thought I was going to have to get a whole new bucket or something was wrong with it. To give your bucket a good cleaning periodically, we do recommend running a cycle through of citrus rinds only. This will help with any residue that may be under the grinding arm in the internal component filtering system. So basically, he told me that what I thought was an issue really wasn't an issue at all. Such good news, you guys. I was so happy about that, especially because I had only owned my FoodCycler for 6 months when this started to occur. So now I've got a little clip for you of putting a load through the FoodCycler that actually took a bucket that looked like this and completely cleaned it out. So I want to show that to you now before we go into loading a new cycle in this FoodCycler. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and load this batch of food scraps. You can see I've already got a little bit of food scraps in the FoodCycler. There's a couple lemon peel halves, and I've got a lot of skins from sweet potato and butternut squash from the food I make for my dog. And right in the middle, you can kind of see here that I have some leftover cashew and pecan pulp from my almond cow. And one of the important things about the FoodCycler is that you want a good mix of food scraps that you're putting into it. I've got a good mix here. I'm going to add these egg shells from this morning's breakfast. Now we want to make sure that we don't have it above this line. You can see it right here. So we need to keep it below that line and not fill it too full. I'm also going to add these carrot greens to the top of it. So we'll put the carrot greens on the top, and that will be the end of this batch. I think there's some miscellaneous other food scraps down at the bottom of this one as well. But that should do it, and that is a good variety of items. The lemon peels can actually help to clean out the Vitamix too. There we go, we have this batch, and now I'm gonna take it out to my FoodCycler and start running it. Okay, so here's my FoodCycler. I've set it up outside of my kitchen door, which is really great. We have a plug right here, so it makes it easy to plug it in, and it's right outside the kitchen door. So we have to line up the arrow with the top of the FoodCycler. Look at that, it goes right in, arrow to arrow. Drop the handle down. We'll put the lid on, lock it up, and then I'll go ahead and push start. 2 times to get it going. My filter does need to be changed, but I don't really care that much because it's outside, so it's not really smelling up my house at all. So I don't really need to worry about that so much. And I push start again, and there it goes drying. So we're gonna let that sit. It's probably gonna take 4 or 5 hours. I believe it's about 8:20 or 8:30 in the morning. So we'll check back and see when it's finished. Here are the results of that batch. Wow, guys, it looks so good. Look at this. You can see that it's a very nice consistency. It's almost like soil. It's so amazing. Really nice. And it didn't stick at all to the bottom of the bin. The bottom is nice and clean. Let me get it out of the way so you can see a little better. Really, really clean. It actually cleaned the bucket really well and cleaned it off the sides quite a bit too. A little stuck on here, but not much. Really good batch. So you can see what happens when you use a variety of food scraps like we did in that last batch. So wasn't that amazing, guys? Did you see how that mix of everything that I put in that load of composting just cleaned out the entire bucket? As you can see, I have in front of me some of the items that I've collected, just food scraps, food waste that I've collected over the last several days, and it's all ready to be composted. On this tray, I've got butternut squash, I have the rinds and the seeds and pulp that's on the inside. I've got some sweet potato peels, asparagus, onion scraps, onion skins, some broccoli stems. I have some tea bags here. I always take the strings and staples off my tea bags and throw them in my FoodCycler. You can totally do that. It completely works. And then I also have some citrus peels here and some eggshells. Eggshells work fine too. They will leave the eggshells in the end result, just little tiny pieces of them. That's totally fine, and they're actually really great for the soil. So we do want to go ahead and put those in. For a while I was leaving them out, but then I realized it's probably better to keep them in the compost that you're making. So all of this is really great for the FoodCycler. I also have a bowl full of pulp. This is almond and coconut pulp from my almond cow. I made a batch of almond milk not too long ago, and this pulp actually composts so nicely, you guys. And in fact, you saw it in the video. I had put some in the batch that really cleaned out my bucket. So really great to compost that. The other thing I love adding to my compost is my dead flowers. They provide a little bit of roughage, a little extra fiber, and I think that really helps to clean out the bucket. So save those. You can cut them up if you need to and put them inside. And then in this bucket, I've got more flower stems and even really gross and moldy stuff that has been sitting in my compost bin for a couple of days. The FoodCycler can take that as well. And like we said, once it's dried, when it finishes its drying process, there's no more mold, there's no more bacteria on the food. You can completely put in gross and moldy stuff as well. And then last but not not least, I just want to show you that I make a nice herbal chai tea that I get from Mountain Rose Herbs, and ooh, it smells really good, you guys. It smells like ginger and it's delicious. But anyway, the leftover tea from your batches of chai or even coffee or that sort of thing is perfect for the FoodCycler as well. So we can totally put this in also. Now, like we said, this is a pretty good mix of items. I think for this batch, what I would like to do is do what FoodCycler suggested and put a lot of these citrus rinds in the bucket, because let's test it out and let's see if that actually cleans out our bucket on this cycle as well. So let's just load up the bucket together. So I've got my bucket here. I'm gonna go ahead and put these eggshells into it. So we'll add that in. We're gonna add these lemon peels, and here's even a mandarin peel that I've got here on my tray. I'm gonna go ahead and put in some of these broccoli stems, just a few of the asparagus stems as well. We can go ahead and add the tea bags because I'm sure that won't be too starchy. And then last but not least, I'm gonna go ahead and put these dead flower stems in here as well. I can break these up a little bit and then they fit in pretty nicely at the top. So I just bend them a little bit and set them in right at the top. So you can see that that looks nice in my bucket, and there is a little line inside. I showed you that in the video, where you want to make sure that you do not overfill it. I think overfilling actually contributes to some of the sticking on the bottom of the FoodCycler as well. I'm just gonna wash my hands real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, so now I'm gonna open my FoodCycler and we'll set the bucket in, matching arrow to arrow at the top. Goes in nicely, put the handle down, make sure my items are inside of the bucket, and then we'll go ahead and turn it to lock, and then I can push the button here at the top, push it again to get the cycle started, and now it says drying, and this is the noise that the FoodCycler makes. We'll let it go through this cycle, and then we'll open it up and see what we've got. Okay friends, I got an error code and I just wanted to include this in the troubleshooting video. So you see that the drying light is blinking. When the drying light blinks, that means that the machine is actually overloaded. Let's open our FoodCycler here. Okay, so I opened the FoodCycler, and basically what it said is that something is getting caught in and around the grinder. So once I can dislodge that, then it will go back to doing its job. And it actually looks pretty good in here. Not sure what's in the way. You do have to make sure, this is pretty hot when we open it up, but see, I can see that it isn't moving. So I'm gonna have to get a utensil because it is really warm and I want to be able to move whatever is in the way. All right, so I'm back with a knife, and let's see if we can move whatever is in the way out of the way. Here, we want it to keep moving all the way around, and we can see that it is definitely getting stuck somewhere. And where and how it is getting stuck, I don't exactly know. But clearly probably some of the stems of what I put into it was a little too much and maybe should have been cut. Okay, so here's what I did, guys. I went ahead and put all of my compost into this glass measuring cup, and you can see there's just a ton of stems here. So this is what they mean by things that are too fibrous. Obviously, some of my flower stems I should have either cut up or just not included in this batch. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those because it wants to continue to grind it. And so we want to let it finish its cycle. So I'm just going to take out some of these. I can still put those into my compost because they are pretty dried and totally compostable. And then I can put the rest of this back in and just let it finish its cycle. So we can see this batch did not remove the caked on stuff at the bottom of the machine. So let's add that back in. We're gonna put the lid back on. And line it up and lock it. And we'll go ahead and push start. And it'll start right at grinding, which is where it was before. So let's give that a try and see if it will finish its cycle. See, it never made it to cooling, which is the last cycle, and that's why the bucket was so hot. So I can hear it working. I'm gonna clean up my mess and let it finish its cycle. Okay guys, so here we are. It ended up taking almost 5 hours for that batch to process in the FoodCycler. FoodCycler says that it will take 3 to 8 hours for a batch of compost to complete. So that was a very normal cycle. Remember, what happened is this was too much for this FoodCycler to process. I put in stem from my flowers that I was composting, and it was just too thick, too much to break down. And so we ended up with these dried out strands that were getting tangled up inside of the FoodCycler. So I should have cut those more or just excluded that stem altogether. So you do have to be careful when you're putting your leftover bouquet parts in the FoodCycler. But we let the cycle finish, and this is what we ended up with. So it's a pretty nice batch, but we can see there's still some caked on down at the bottom. So I'm gonna dump this out real quick and we can just look at the bucket and examine what is caked on. We can see that the sides are pretty clear, but the bottom is definitely still caked on. So here's my bucket after this batch. So that batch did not clear out the caked on stuff at the bottom of the FoodCycler. So this is very hard. It's stuck on. It is not coming off. It's a pretty thick layer. And so what I'm gonna do now is what FoodCycler recommends. I just juiced a bunch of lemons, and I'm gonna take all of these lemon rinds and go ahead and put them in to my FoodCycler. So I'm doing 3 lemons, which is basically 6 halves. And then I do have some mandarin peels too, and I think we'll just go ahead and throw those in. So we're just gonna run this batch with these lemon rinds. I'm gonna go ahead and put in this pulp too from my juicer, because I think that will be just fine to add in as well. It's not too much soft stuff. And then we're gonna run this batch and we'll see what it looks like in the end. Well, okay guys, this is the result of that last batch where I did only lemon peels. And look, there's still a very big caking on. You can see it's very thick. I can't even scratch it off at all. Big caked on section down here at the bottom of my FoodCycler, and it looks like it dried nicely. It processed, it's turning, so things are good, except it just has this very caked on layer at the bottom of the FoodCycler. So the FoodCycler support person's own recommendation didn't actually work to get the caked on stuff off the bottom of my FoodCycler. So I'm just going to continue to try different batches and see if this caked on layer will come off. I'll record what I'm putting in each time and what it looks like when it comes out of the FoodCycler, and we can just see what it takes and if and when the caked on layer will resolve itself. So let's get started now. I'm gonna dump this one and put in a new batch. Well, I've gone through cycle after cycle of composting my food scraps, and still there is a thick layer of caked on food on the bottom of my FoodCycler. So I've emptied the bucket here, and this is what it looks like. I think I'm going to go ahead and contact FoodCycler again and just see what they have to say, because I've done a cycle with only lemon rinds and it didn't clear. So I'm not sure if I need to just go ahead and wash it out and start all over, or if there's something else going on that I'm not aware of. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and fill it up with a regular load of my household compost. I also added all of the almond pulp and cashew and pecan pulp from my almond cow, and that usually makes a really nice fine compost once it gets dried out and ground up in the FoodCycler. So I'll go ahead and put this cycle in and we'll see what it turns out like. And in the meantime, I will contact FoodCycler and let's see what they have to say. Well, here's the next batch. Still a big layer at the bottom of caked on stuff. I'm going to try one more batch and then I'm going to go ahead and wash it off. Here we are with yet another caked on finish, but you can see that it is starting to come up around the sides, around the edges. So it's shifting a little bit, but still pretty caked on and pretty dark down there. So I'm going to try another batch of compost and see what happens. And then I may just go ahead and wash it off and start with a clean slate. So I don't have that much compost today. I have all these carrot tops and I went ahead and cut them up just to make sure that they didn't have a problem. And then I've got a bunch of sweet potato and butternut squash skins and just a few old pistachios that we needed to throw out. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in and we'll see what we get. It's going to be a good amount of starchy stuff, so that will be interesting. But hopefully combined with the carrot tops, it will be a good batch. All right, let's see what happens. Okay guys, so I know last time I said I was going to go ahead and wash the bucket if it didn't come clean, but I just want to show you after the last batch of compost, part of it is starting to come clean. We can see it's kind of scraped off a little bit over there, and it seems like slightly thinner. And I have a bunch of compost that I need to put in, some tea, some broccoli, and some other tea bags, and then I've got my whole bucket of compost there. So I'm gonna just go ahead and put this batch in, and let's see what happens this time. Okay guys, so here is after that batch. A little bit has come up from the sides, still pretty coated. I actually wrote to FoodCycler and I'm just gonna wait for them to write back to me. So I'm just gonna keep running my compost in here and just wait and see what they say. So I'm gonna put this whole batch of compost in. There's a little bit of ginger, there's a bunch of pear and apple scraps. I made a beautiful pear crisp last night. I'll just show you. Ooh, so yummy. We ate it for breakfast. It's so good. Of course, I made it with allulose and swerve, so it doesn't have any sugar except for the naturally occurring sugars in the apples and pears. But anyway, that's why I have all these food scraps. So I also have some onions and different things in here because I made my yummy spaghetti casserole with squash with zucchini last night. So I've got those food scraps in here as well. There's coming some zucchini scraps. Kind of messy, but I'm just gonna take all of this. There's the onion scraps. Putting it all over here into my FoodCycler. There we go, and just a little bit left. Garlic peels, you can put those in as well. Throwing this all into my FoodCycler. There we go, and definitely below the line there, so this should be a fine batch. We'll put that in and see what happens. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is the moment we've been waiting for. Look at that, our last batch just cleaned out the bucket really well. Let me empty this and I'll show you what it looks like completely emptied out. Okay, I just emptied out the bucket. This is my compost from that last batch. And this is what the bucket looks like. Wow, guys, it really cleaned it out. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Now, I still have a message out to FoodCycler, so let's see what they say to us. But it seems like the answer is just keep composting. And sometimes it will get a caked on bottom, but eventually that caked on layer will resolve itself with just further composting. So I'm going to add some more compost into the bucket here. I've got a whole bowl of compost. Onion skins, avocado peel, all sorts of stuff here. Even some lemon peels, some Brussels sprouts, scraps from my dinner last night. So we'll run this batch. Oh, I even have a flower from my bouquet. All right, here it is in the morning. Another nice, clean, clear batch. So I'm going to pour this out so we can see exactly how it looks. So I poured my compost into here, and look at my bucket, you guys. Again, good and clean and clear. I'm going to put another batch of compost in now. Got some lemons, some kale stems, some eggs, some broccoli stems. So I'm going to put all of this into my bucket. Okay, there we go. It's all in the bucket. I'm actually leaving some room because I think that might also be key to keeping the bucket nice and clean, is leaving a little bit of room between the food scraps and the fill line. So here we go. Let's put this batch in. Here's another clean bottom in the FoodCycler bucket. I'm just going to empty this out and we can see exactly what it looks like. There's my compost. Here's my clean bucket. So I think that filling it less full is definitely a key. Wow, that was a lot of footage of composting in the FoodCycler. It's 5 or 6 weeks later now, folks, so I'm coming back to report to you the final summary about how to care for your FoodCycler and how to troubleshoot things that might come up. So before we summarize, I just want to say, if you are enjoying this video, definitely hit the like button. That just helps this video find the people who need it. And also consider subscribing. If this is information that you enjoy, then hit the subscribe button and the little bell so that you get notified of all the videos that are coming up. So we're going to summarize in just a few minutes, but let's go ahead and open up my FoodCycler after its most recent composting and just see what it looks like. And it looks like we've got some good compost here in the bucket. And I'm going to pour that into my bowls here. Look at all this compost that I've collected over the last few weeks, guys. I think my next video about FoodCycler is going to be about what to do with all of this compost that you're collecting. You can see I've got a full Ziploc, a partial Ziploc, 2 bowls full of really nice compost. Isn't that fantastic? And you saw all the compost that I had here on my counter before, so I've composted that and so much more, which is really reducing my waste and reducing what I am sending to the landfill. And that can't be better. And also, we've got all of this compost to enrich our soil, enrich our gardens, and just give back to the earth. So that is super cool as well. So we can see that the bottom of my bucket definitely has some caked on residue again. And what we've learned here in this video and just over time is that this is really a natural occurrence. It's normal for the FoodCycler. So what I thought was once a problem, I found out through my communications with FoodCycler and just continued use over the last 8 or 9 months is that this condition is very normal. So that's number one, you guys. Caking is completely normal in your FoodCycler, and the FoodCycler is a self-cleaning machine. So the blades inside of the bucket will actually clean the bucket naturally just over time. So there's really nothing that you have to do about it. And you saw that in the videos that I shared with you here. And when I wrote to the FoodCycler team, Joey, he's a really nice person and he just answers all of my questions. So that's another great thing that you need to know is if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to write to FoodCycler. You can also write to me. I'm always happy to help. But number one is that the caking at the bottom of the bucket is completely normal. You just let it be and it will eventually clean itself. Number two is to cut up things that are a little bit thicker and more tough, like you saw in the videos when I put my flowers in there. Some of those stems were just a little too tough, and that can clog up your bucket. It can make the blades unable to turn and process the compost correctly. So cut stems up, cut more fibrous vegetables up to make it easier on your FoodCycler. Because you will get an error message if the FoodCycler is unable to grind and process your compost well. Number three is don't overfill your bucket. So there is a line inside. It shows you where to fill your compost to, but I find that it just works so much better if you really leave a little bit of space even up to that line. So you really are just composting small loads, and even doing that once or twice a day is really best. Now, last but not least, number four, I'm going to talk about a question that one of you posted in the comments section, and I was able to find the answer for it, and I just want to share that here with you in the community. So I'm going to turn my FoodCycler around so that we can look at the back of it. It's all about the filter, guys. So let's take the filter out and we'll talk about that as well. Okay, so here is the back of my FoodCycler, and on the top there is a change filter light. It's the fourth light up on your FoodCycler, and that light will come on after about 4 to 6 months once the filters really do need to be changed. Now, I have my FoodCycler outside, like I said before, so I don't worry about the filters. I'm not worried about odor, and the only reason that the filters are in here is to reduce odor while you're composting. So for me, I don't really need to change them. But if you have yours in the house, then you probably do. So you can see we can just easily remove the cover to the filters here. And then we've got the filters right here in the back of the FoodCycler. There's a little cap that comes off there, and you can just twist and turn, and the cartridge will come right out. So you are able to compost the charcoal that is inside of this little canister. So you basically just pop off the lid here. It can be a little messy, so be forewarned, and then you can just empty the charcoal into your composter. It's really great for the soil. And then this plastic canister that the charcoal is housed in can then be completely recycled. So that is a really big bonus, guys. And I can hear the charcoal in there. So it's just like little charcoal beads that are inside of this canister. So that is the answer to that question. Number four is yes, you can recycle this charcoal canister, and you can actually compost the charcoal that is inside. So sustainable, you guys. Isn't that excellent? So that's all I have to share with you today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful for you. And if you do have any questions, feel free to contact me or just leave a comment down below, because I'm always happy to help. I wish you all the very best of health, friends, and I'll see you in the next video.